Welcome back, everyone, to the Game Time podcast. Coach Hester sticking around for our NBA portion of the show. This is where we'll talk about the finals a little bit. We don't want to preview Game 2 as much because the plan right now is me and Daryl will record after Game 2. Of course, Ramon, you can be there. The plan is to record after Game 2 of the finals and kind of go over how that game went. If you haven't checked out the one from Game 1, I advise you to go check that one out as well. And then we also had a video that went up yesterday talking about the MLB and kind of its problems and then NASCAR's TV deal with Amazon. But to go to the NBA portion, fellas, we're going to talk about everything that for some reason everyone cares about so much, and that is the ratings. The ratings for game one of the NBA Finals, 8.91 million viewers on ABC, making it the lowest rated and least watched finals opener since Nielsen started tracking in 1988, excluding the COVID-impacted 2020 and 2021 series. Now, for me personally, I don't think the ratings, obviously the ratings matter to the big wigs, but I've always said it. As a fan, nobody should really care about the ratings, right? Rather, and I think Adam Silver said it was a show on Fox Sports where he's like, we need to get to a point where the NFL's at, where it doesn't matter the market, right? Whether it's the Chiefs and if it's the Chiefs and Green Bay, people are going to watch that for the names. I think the NBA does have a marketing problem in some degree because Shea and Tyrese, right, two of the best players in the league, I don't think they're viewed as marketable yet. And Shea just won an MVP. Whereas you look on the NFL side, you could say Hurts is marketable. Mahomes is definitely marketable. You could say every player or team that goes to the Super Bowl, they've got one marketable player. Where on the NBA side, it feels like a lot of these people don't view the stars as real stars when it comes to marketability and stuff like that. But I think that's more of a problem on the NBA side as well. What are you guys thinking when it comes to the ratings? Why is it such a problem? Because I don't think the markets should matter.
I'll jump in because you guys told me just jump in. So I'll tell you,
Go
you
ahead.
had to know going into this, the ratings are going to be down just because you've got the smaller cities in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always going to be more of a driver if it's in New York City or if it's in LA or if it's Houston or, somewhere like that where there's larger markets, they're going to just naturally have more eyes on it. Right. But I think ESPN and some other places have done such a great job since game one of being able to talk about, how Indiana's come back in all these games and, Tyrese playing the villain. And it's been a lot more talk about game one because all I do is listen to sports talk radio and I'm on the road all the time too. So I hear a lot of it. And, it's just been nonstop to the point where I've turned it a few times because I'm like, okay, I've already heard this narrative and talk to it. I think you're going to see a bigger ratings push moving forward because people are going to see that these two teams do play a great brand of basketball and they're going to make for great games. And so I think that you're going to see a jump as we go versus what you got on game one.
I think that's a good point, Coach, but I take it a little bit further back. I blame David Stern. David Stern created a dynamic of superstar player. Went from teams to player, and people start following players, not teams. So when players would move, they would follow the player because that's kind of the methodology. You're talking about a team, a franchise in the Pacers, and not just because I'm a Pacer fan. This has been one of the best organizations the last 25 years. They haven't got a lot of pub at all because, again, in Indianapolis as a market. But this isn't anything new. I'm hearing these talking heads on the radio, to your point, Coach, listen to them in the car a lot, listen to talk radio. I'm hearing them talk about, Alan Neesmith, right? And Aaron Nimhart. They don't even know who these guys are because they're not following them, right?
Yep.
So, and I'm sitting here watching the Pacers, in about, 20 home games and then on television every chance I get an opportunity, and they don't even know who the players are, right? And I think that's a direct reflection on how the NBA is viewed from that perspective. So until that dynamic changes, we all and Isaiah and I both talked about it the other day. Yeah, I don't care if 500,000 people watch it or 500 million people watch it because you're talking about two of the best teams in the league and play, in my opinion, the best brand of basketball, not ISO ball, not 5-out only, and everybody's shooting threes. Even you got an open drive to the cup. So I like this type of basketball, and again, I'm hoping myself that it continues to grow legs in the NBA, because I think this is what we should be appreciating as NBA fans.
Ramon, what's your thoughts?
I think that the mass media affects NBA more than it does the other sports. I just jumped on Google right now and I said, what NBA player is the most searched in June 2025? Who was it, y'all? Everybody know. LeBron James, right? Then it said the following is other players: Steph Curry, Luka, Ja. Man, they all gone. They all out of the playoffs. Why are they searched? Why all these articles about them? Why? And then you jump on NFL, because I think they let the players kind of speak for themselves with their play, and it helps with the team sport thing. You put the same thing in, you take NBA out, you put NFL in, it pops up Amari Cooper, Gabe Davis, my dog J.K. Dobbins. Why? I like J.K., but why? So it's like Aaron Rodgers was last on the list. Let it kind of flow. Let it kind of be what it's going to be. And I think that we push, or with the NBA, they push certain people. You want Ant-Man to be the face of the NBA. Kid's incredibly talented, super talented. I would never say he's not. But he said the N-word doing an interview.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He talked about his genitals live. Well, when back in the day would that be the face of the NBA or anything? It would. The NFL, he'd be in all kind of trouble because they protect the shield. And it's about the shield.
Well, I'm sorry. I heard someone say, I forgot who it was. It was on one of the bigger shows on television or whatnot. But the talk about who's the next face of the NBA has to stop, because you still have Curry in the league, you still have Braun in the league, and until both of them are retired, there's not a case for that right now. You can't say that right now because you still have those two in the league. And Ramon, you said it a couple episodes ago, the league is continuing to market those two, and they're not really marketing anybody else. So in that case, we got to stop saying, oh, Shea can be the next face of the league. Ant can be they're not the face of the league, and they're not going to be until Curry's gone and LeBron's gone. And even when KD's gone, they're not going to be. When they put out the Netflix documentary about the Olympics, I had just watched that a couple nights ago. They talked about Ant and that interaction with Obama. They talked about some other stuff. They talked about Wemby. They talked about all these other guys. But at the end of the day, when it came down to the on the court stuff, they focused on KD, Steph, and LeBron. That was it. They didn't talk about anybody else in that whole dynamic. A little bit of Steve Kerr because he's the coach, obviously. But so at the end of the day, there's no new face of the league yet. It's not Jokic. It's not Shea. It's not Wemby. It's none of those guys. It's KD, Steph, and LeBron still. And really, it's LeBron, Steph, KD, because that's how it looks in the face of the media and everywhere else. Because when we go into the next rumor, it's about the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, because he's highly sought after.
Whoever it is, I don't care. Just let it be. Let it happen.
Yeah, naturally, organically.
That's what I was just organically. Yep. The guy that wins and the guy that becomes that, it's when you try to force it, it's not going to happen. When it happens organically, it'll sustain. It'll be it'll be legit. People will buy into it. They don't feel like it's going to be forced down their throat,
and people will hate it as well. You know what I'm saying? Like when Mahomes,
and that's okay.
I'm just getting if you give an example, when Mahomes first took on Brady in the AFC title game and lost, people were upset because people wanted to see Brady lose and wanted to see Mahomes win. But now that Mahomes has won, people watch Mahomes lose, right? And people were rooting for Jalen Hurts. In a couple years, people are not going to want Hurts to win if Hurts gets another Super Bowl.
But that's natural. That's natural. It even goes back.
But that's Patriots, what you want,
It goes, Steelers, Cowboys, Patriots. That's always been the dynamic, right? They get up. I remember, this is funny. In '99, I was rooting hard for the Patriots, right? Never been a Patriot fan, but I wanted them to beat the Rams. Why? Because the greatest show on turf. And they hurt my hero, Steve McNair, in that Super Bowl prior year. That hurt me, right? Because it was after that. But that hurt me because I wanted Steve McNair, the guy from Mississippi, to have the wins, right? So yeah, you know, you think about those things, and that's a part of it. But I think, you know, to Coach's point, you know, you've got these guys who are the pillars, right? Bron, KD, Steph, and they're going to be there until they're not.
Yep.
So what I think what's happening is there's talk about trying to get groom guys to be up and coming. You can't have it given to you. And again, I know, you know, Isaiah, you're not a huge fan of Barkley on television, but he said it. He said, you can't force a guy to be the face.
Yeah.
He said it has to happen naturally. And when you try to force it, people are going to resist and they're going to go the other way. And especially for me with Ant, I love his talent, but there's nothing else I like about him. Nothing, not his nothing. Just his talent is great. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's fair.
You look at two things of the media forcing things. All right. You look at the WNBA. It could, even though it's growing, it could grow way quicker if they just let this happen.
Yeah.
But they want to force the Angel Reese this and the Caitlyn versus this and just let it flow.
Yeah.
Just let it go. You got a great person in there. You got a great person coming in a second. You know, this can be good, but you're going to force all these different pieces through our media, and it's going to erupt. And for them, it's erupting internally. They're getting ate up from the inside.
They still have plenty. Like Paige Buckers doesn't have a good team yet. You still have Juju that has to come into the league. They still have a lot of pieces.
Juju's coming.
They still have a lot of pieces that they can build around. I want to get to the next two things that I've got, if that's okay with you guys. I do want to go to KD, and I want to go back to a team I think we talked about last week, Daryl, and that's Toronto. Giannis, there was a report a couple weeks ago we brought on it. Giannis wants to stay in the East. Toronto, Masai Ujiri, he was the one that got the Kawhi Leonard trade a couple of years ago. He wants to get a big fish in Toronto. We talked about the idea of Giannis. They also, of course, have some interest in landing Kevin Durant as well. Daryl, we talked about last week, New York has interest in getting Kevin Durant as well. I am still a firm believer that KD will end up in Houston. I'm going to stay on that one. I think KD ends up in Houston, and I think everyone's going to have to go fight for Giannis. I don't think New York's in the picture. I think New York's going to have to sit still, and if they are going to make a move, they're going to have to move Cat. I don't think anyone wants OG Anunoby for Giannis. I don't think anyone wants Mikal and OG for Giannis, and you don't really got the first picks to do it because you made one of the worst trades in the last year since the Paul George Shea trade, and you gave 4 picks up for Mikal Bridges. I think Toronto will get Giannis if they make the right moves. I think, if anything, that's a good spot for them. And Daryl, we've talked about it. Any other team that trades for Giannis, right, you're basically putting Giannis in the same spot. I think Toronto is the exception here because you're not going to trade Ingram and Scotty Barnes. You're going to trade Barnes or Ingram. And then that leaves you with some other pieces that may be involved with the deal. But I think the difference is here, Toronto is so young, is that there is some pieces they can give away and be like, all right, but we still got this guy, you know? So I think Toronto, whether it's KD or Giannis, I think they have the most firepower to do it. And I kept them in the back of my head when we've talked about this the last couple of weeks, but I didn't know if they wanted to make a move because they traded for Ingram at the deadline. Then they paid Ingram. So I didn't know if they wanted to make a move, but we know Masai Ujiri, right? The Raptors were second in the East and first in the East, and then he moved DeMar for Kawhi, and it worked out in the short term, not the long term. So I could see Ujiri doing this type of deal to land them Kevin Durant. And then to kind of follow up on that report as well, the Knicks, obviously they're in their head coaching search, and I think that search will also play in a role of what they do. Some of those candidates are Ime Udoka, Chris Finch, and Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd's the head coach at Dallas, Finch is in Minnesota, and Udoka's in Houston. So there's that second report to go along with that. And then I've got one more report as well, and maybe another one I got to keep looking, though. But I'll let you guys discuss the KD and Toronto stuff.
Are you saying you don't think New York would be willing to trade Cat?
I don't think so, but I think I could see it because last week we also said a lot of people were frustrated with his defensive effort. So I'm not saying they don't move Cat, but I think you just moved it. You just got him. So I don't know if they would, but we'll have to see.
It's not his defensive effort. It's his who he is. Like I don't
coach.
Yeah, I don't think that I mean, could it be better? Yeah, but it ain't gonna change. He's been in the league for how long now? I
Mhm.
mean, and so why would you not move that? Because if you can't play your two best players on the court at the same time because they both suck defensively,
Yeah.
one of them's got to go, and Brunson ain't going, right?
No.
I mean, you talked about possible future faces of the league. Could be, that could be him. You don't know, being in a major market area, and he's going to win at a pretty high level all the time. And he's a likable guy, right? He's an intelligent guy. I think Cat moving is very possible, and I think with the age difference and stuff like that, I could see it being an affordable trade for Phoenix to be able to make that happen.
So
Mhm.
with that said, with Phoenix, my concern with Phoenix is the fact that you've got to have your $53 million player waive his no trade clause. Word on the street is that he is happy in Arizona. Obviously, coming from St. Louis, going to as a kid growing up, going to Washington D.C., being out in Phoenix. Bradley Beal is spoken about saying, "Listen, there's no guarantee I'm going to waive it because I love being in Phoenix. He loves that area so much, just like KD does." So I think that's going to be the breaking point if he waives his no trade clause. And I think, Coach, that can springboard some other things into action. I think.
Possible, very possible.
Yeah.
You see these no trade clauses though on some people, and they will waive them if they're guaranteed more money somewhere else, or
Right.
something happens.
Oh, absolutely. So, but let me ask you this, Coach. For your coach, what would you do with Bradley Beal? This guy is deficient on defense. He's past his offensive prime. What do you do with a guy like
I've never coached in the NBA, so I don't know
that?
what the ramifications are. I know what I would do. I would not. I would either. I would probably just not renew the contract, but it's a multi-year deal, so you can't.
Right.
You know, I'm a big believer, and sometimes you just you gotta you gotta let a guy go.
Well,
Bite the bullet. What you
Right,
saying?
right.
I
Uh,
I do have.
you fish until you find some sucker that's gonna take it, and you take whatever pieces come back in that,
Yeah.
and then work with those pieces. But because you got to do something,
So
you got to do something.
I do have a report. It's from 2 days ago. It's from John. I can't say his last name, but he works for Sports Radio Talk Arizona 98.7 FM in Phoenix. And the report is the Phoenix Suns have zero interest in acquiring Karl Anthony Towns in a potential Kevin Durant trade. So obviously, not the biggest news source, but it is a report. So I mean, I'd be curious to see what, because I think Booker and Cat would pair
But
well. I don't remember. I think they both played at Kentucky or one played at Duke, but
Yeah.
I think they would pair well. But if Phoenix doesn't want to make the trade, they don't want to make the trade. What are your thoughts on Toronto making a potential move for
but
either?
back to that.
Go
Back to
ahead.
that. How many times in any type of
That is true.
negotiations does anybody ever tell the truth?
That's
Right.
true.
You
Very
put
true.
that out
Everybody's
there.
playing
You put
poker.
that out there.
Everybody's playing
Yeah,
poker.
you driving the price down. We don't want to trade them. Well, what if we give you this? Would you trade them? You
Yeah.
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
big difference there.
That's a good point, right? So, to that, looking at Cat is who he is. He's not gonna, change his spots. He's not going to turn into Shaq, right? But he's a very, very good player. I just think when last summer, actually in the beginning of training camp, I said, what are they doing? I just didn't think that he and Brunson would be able to mix. And then in the playoffs, it kind of showed. It took a while, but it kind of showed itself, right? When coach put one of them on the bench while the other was playing
Who?
for a decent part of the time.
Somebody said it. I forgot who said it. I'd have to go back. I don't remember who said it, but I think it's a great point. These teams have to stop building, they have to stop constructing their teams around one team, right? New York specifically built this team for Boston, right? And they went out and made this team better so they could beat Boston. And then what happened? They didn't get Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals like everyone thought or like they thought. They got Indiana. And Indiana matchup wise, it's not a good matchup for New York. They were set for Boston. They were built to beat Boston. That's why this New York team was built at the end, just like Minnesota, right? Minnesota's whoever constructed Minnesota, I forgot what his name is. He was originally in Denver. He built that Denver team. So what did he do? He built that Minnesota team to beat Denver. These teams have to stop building for one team because we've seen in this decade's been about parity. It changes every single year with the playoff picture and who comes out on top. The Pacers and the Thunder did a good job of building for everybody and not just one team. Whereas you look at Minnesota, they built themselves from Denver, but they can't beat Dallas or Oklahoma City.
And it's crazy, and they had to.
Yeah.
But Minnesota's in that same realm from a small market, but they had these marketable players, right? You had Ant, you had Cat, and you traded and you gave up your future for Rudy Gobert, who's a one-trick pony, right? So they're kind of stuck in that way, in my belief, and it showed in that series against Oklahoma City, right? As I said, you're playing 3-on-5 from an offensive perspective, right? So I think you make a good point about that. But Coach, I got another question for you. Going back to Toronto, I want to pick your brain.
Ramon, what were you gonna say?
I'm sorry.
I got a quick question for y'all.
Oh, go ahead.
New York. Player trade, new coach. Does this happen before or after they decide what they want to do with Rick Brunson? And any of the players that possibly coming in, where they have a decision like, hey, you got to get rid of him before I even tell you I'm coming. Or a coach saying the same thing.
Say it again?
No, what he's saying is Rick Brunson being Jalen's father. Jalen's father.
Okay.
There's talk about there's some grumblings of players in the locker room not liking Rick being on the bench, right? And then there's the other thing about this. Last summer, Brunson took a pay cut, well, quote unquote, pay cut or less money because of the cat thing coming over, him, being aware of that. Is there any tie-in with Brunson taking a pay cut, quote unquote, for his teammate in Villanova, right? Coming on board with the four or five first round picks, and then the tie-in with his dad. So I think, to your point, Ramon, I think the Rick Brunson situation has to be settled first before they make the decision on what they're going to do next. And a lot of people aren't talking about it, Ramon.
But that'll be catch on that. Easy though, because when coaches come, they bring their own staffs.
Yep.
So I think that's the thing. If he's not in line for the head coaching job, it's going to take care of itself because it's going to be and they as players they know that Jalen's not going to say, "Hey, you got to keep my dad."
But let me ask you. But with that said, think he took less to have his boy come in. His dad's on the bench. There's obviously there's a strong relationship there. And then the other piece of that is who made the decision to fire Thibodeau? Was it the owner? I don't think it was general manager. I don't think it was general manager. I think it was the owner. I think it was something else there.
I read something. It was the players had a bit of it. I heard Cat was also a very strong voice in there that wanted him gone. But I think Thibodeau had to leave. It sucks because with how much success they have, and then you let him go after an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. But I think you just can't. I don't think you can win with 7 guys and your starting lineup playing almost 40 minutes. It's basically what destroyed him last year with the injuries and stuff.
So from a pure basketball perspective, if I'm looking at this, I think that anytime a coach gets fired, I hate it. I can't stand it because I think it's not. I just because I'm too close to it, I guess. Right. But I hate it. But if I'm being honest and ask myself, were the Knicks going to win with Thibodeau as win a championship with Thibodeau as the head coach? No. I don't think they would. I think he's too set on how he does things in order to make that happen. And so if that's truly what you're after, he had to go. Mm-hmm. I think that's that was something that had to be done. If that is ultimately, and that's what the GM and the owner came out and said that they valued was they're chasing a championship, nothing else. Well, then if you're honest with yourself, are you going to win with him as your coach? I think they probably maxed out what they could do, which would be the conference finals. Maybe occasionally get to the finals and they're going to get beat by somebody else just because of the style that they play, the wear and tear on the players throughout the course of the year and the series and things like that. It's just not going to do it. And plus, dude looks like he's about ready to have an aneurysm or something after every single call. I got tired. Stop showing him on the TV after every call because it's the same.
It hurts. It looks like it hurts. It hurts. It hurts, right?
It hurts. Yeah, it's like, dude, go to the bathroom or something. Get rid of that.
Coach, I think you made a good point with he was too set in his way. We talked about it after game one, Daryl. Carlisle has kind of got out of his way, right? He's let his
It's been
players,
different.
yeah,
Yes, it's been different.
he's taken a step back. I want to go to something that we talked about last week. I posted a clip about it. It was about Darius Garland potentially leaving Cleveland. Brian Windhorst was on a show in ESPN in Cleveland, and he said, and I quote, "I think there's some belief that Darius Garland might be available under the right circumstances. I think the Cavs are listening and are open-minded." Coach and Ramon, to fill you in, if you guys didn't watch that episode, there's reports going around that there's a potential Darius Garland for Jalen Suggs trade regarding Orlando and Cleveland. Me and Daryl both kind of agreed. I think it would help both teams, but I think Orlando would then become the better team over Cleveland at that point because I think they both have great depth, but I think their star player has a higher ceiling. I think Mitchell's at his ceiling, and I think Paulo, to me, can be a top 5 player in this league. Position wise, he's a power forward slash small forward, so it's hard to say he's a top 5 player in his position right now because the position is just so mixed together at this point. But I think Paulo has a way higher ceiling. I think Paulo at some point can be a top 3 player, and I think Orlando is showing strides. They put Boston in, I believe, a 5-game series, and all those games were close. I think if you get a guy like Garland that can play make, is a little bit healthier than Suggs. I think when you look at those tiers of the Eastern Conference, I would put Orlando and Cleveland in tier 2 if they were to make this trade, and I think Orlando would be the better team. I'm curious for you, Coach, and Ramon, what your guys' thoughts would be on Garland for Suggs or just Garland being moved in general.
I think if Garland is gone, I think you get a more prominent role from Mitchell and some of those other guys. Mobley, is going to, but I don't know that Mobley scores.
He's
At a high
gotten better,
level.
way
Rim
better.
running,
Better,
a
but
lot of
he's
rim,
not
a lot of rim running.
right. And so I mean, Suggs helps that out with the pass first type mentality and a capable guy, probably a little bit more size to defend some of those guys and
Yep.
that they've had trouble with. I think it really benefits Orlando by giving them another offensive option. And I think, you touched on with Paolo. I mean, I don't think he's even started to touch what he might
That dude's tough.
be.
That dude's
I think
tough,
he's going to
man.
He's
be,
so
yeah, he's going
good.
to
He's
be,
so good.
yeah, I think people forget how young he is,
Yeah, yeah.
and he's going to continue to get better. And I think he's hungry. I think he's not one of those guys that's just happy being where he's at. I think he's going to keep getting better. And that could be that would be a big trade. But on the flip side of that, though, that's what differentiates the Pacers especially from some of you crunch time in either one of those games, who's getting the ball. You know who's going to get it done. With the Pacers, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
You don't know. There's no guarantee Tyrese is taking a shot. He
Yeah.
may make a play.
He's gonna make the play.
Else.
Exactly.
Right.
He's gonna
making
make the play.
That's a tougher situation from a coaching perspective to try to stop when you get in a close game than it is when Paolo's taking that ball. When he gets it, he ain't looking to give it up. When Darius Garland gets it, he ain't looking to give it up. When Donovan Mitchell gets it, he ain't looking to give it up. Those are easy to defend from a strategic standpoint versus when you don't know who's going to get it because this dude's going to break you down, make a play, and it's just going to be the right guy, and knowing that they're all capable of making that shot because he's going to get you a good look. That's a tougher situation. So, I mean, does it make them better on the surface? Yes. Does it guarantee that they take that next step? No. I think Orlando gets better. I don't think it puts them in the – it may – I don't think it puts them in the top 4 of the NBA necessarily.
No, I would agree with that. I think in the East, with Boston out of the picture, I think they are top 5 probably right now. I think because if you look at it, the year before they got eliminated by Cleveland, and that was the 4th seed taking on the 5th seed. The only reason they had to play Boston this year is because they were in the play-in and because Paulo was hurt for a stretch of time, and they just had a lot of injuries. If they weren't injured this year, there's a chance they weren't even in the play-in, and Indiana was playing Orlando in the first round, or they were instead of the 5 seed, they're the 4 or 3rd seed. I think injuries hurt them a lot this year, but I think the year before that they showed they could be a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference. So I'm curious to see if they can stay healthy, what they can do. We've got about under 10 minutes left in the segment. Ramon, I want to get your thoughts on Orlando and Cleveland and if they were to make that trade.
All right, here we go. If they make that trade, right? I hate it. Not because I dislike Orlando, just because Isaiah don't like just because Isaiah likes Orlando a lot. So I always dislike them. All right. You already know, Isaiah. But nah, if they make that trade, I think Orlando positions themselves to be great in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Not right now, but in the future. And that's if those two guys can work together in a way that they're both beneficial and for each other, and that they bring their teammates along with the ride.
Yeah.
They make the right decision, as Coach said, as all you guys said, and they bring their teammates for the ride. And it's just not, hey, you go at it, and I'm going to go at it, and you go at it, and I'm going to go at it. If they're in company, they bring everything under the umbrella, and they become great facilitators as well as how good they can score the basketball. So I think that could be dynamic. That could be something that we could be 3, 4, 5 years from now being like, wow, that's that 1-2 punch that's incredible. I'm biased in this sense that if they do make that trade, I will become an Orlando fan because they'll have two players on that team whose dads I grew up either with or knowing in Gary, Indiana. So I will instantly become an Orlando fan due to the region.
Yeah, and you know what?
Isaiah, let me ask you this: if they was to do it, a lot of that has to do with what pieces go along with that trade.
That's true.
Like losing some key guys. People don't understand some of those guys that are averaging 6-7 points a game are huge contributors, much more so than the numbers or what they're able to do during certain times. So that's a big part of it too. What has to come with that trade? Who loses what? You know what I mean? That's a big deal. And that and then, not that they would take turns. I think people have learned that taking turns with, okay, you go get yours, in some of those super team situations. That's why they don't work out anymore. But we all know in the crunch time in the NBA, the shot clock's running down. They're the greatest one-on-one players in the world. They're going to go to Darius, or they would go to Paolo, and that's what and that's where it becomes tough, because even though the Pacers may be going to Tyrese in that situation, he's not looking to score 100% of the time. And that's why it's so dangerous, right? Yeah. And so that's just that key piece that you got to keep in mind too when you talk about how does it make them better? What other pieces are involved?
No, I'm curious. Yeah, and we talked about it last week. At shooting guard, the Magic, I think you would try to keep Anthony Black because he's getting better all around. I think Cole Anthony could be someone that they put in that trade. I think if to me in my head, I think there would be some picks involved, but I don't see how. I think this trade would, for the most part, I know most trades aren't straight up anymore, but I could see this being a fairly straight up trade that only includes picks and some players to work out the salaries if needed to. Is kind of in my mind what I'm thinking, but there's so much that could go on with that trade, and a third team could get involved as well. There's so much that could go down. We've got about 6 minutes in this segment, so I want to end it off with the finals, not specifically the series itself, but the presentation as a whole. The NBA reportedly removed the finals and playoff decals from the floor in 2014 due to player safety. There were a lot of considerations taking into account making this decision, including player safety. An NBA spokesman said in 2014 of removing the playoff decals, we decided to move the playoff logo from the court for a variety of reasons, including cleaning up the playing surface. And that, it doesn't make any sense to me, because you've got these in-season tournament courts with all these designs and all these different stuff. Like I said on the post show after game one, Daryl, I said it looks like a normal game on a Tuesday. It doesn't feel like the finals. We know it's sponsored by YouTube TV. Like, we know that it's all over the court, but we don't know. But we can't have the finals logo, and we can't have the trophy in the center court. I get it's a small thing, but it makes a difference. For example, no player intros, no national anthem, nothing to give you that, oh yeah, this is the championship. You know why I love the Super Bowl? Because when they do that national anthem, they pan to all the players, they pan to the coaches, they pan to the crowd. They do everything to give you that feeling of,
that's to be politically driven, though, right?
But not even for the political
part. Did they not do player intros?
No, they did, and they also
did we just skip it?
They skipped it, and they also because of the national anthem, right? So let's just call it what it is, right? So in today's climate, this isn't Whitney Houston in Tampa singing the national anthem, right? The days of that type of collaboration are going away, because you got so many sides so much splintering of what's going on, right? And I'm not saying it's right, left, or indifferent, but Adam Silver has shown his willingness to take the high road, so to speak, and not bring in some type of collateral typical damage, right? And that's what I think I believe, right? That doesn't make it right or wrong. I just believe with the current administration in the NBA, this is what you're going to see. So, Coach, you remember back when the Lakers and Detroit and the Lakers and Boston were playing in the late 80s. You remember they do that CBS intro, Dick Stockton, our guy, right? Dick Stockton, he'd be out there. And today we've got the Magic Man. They do like a Magic thing, and then going against his friend Isaiah, and then Isaiah have a hat, pull a rabbit out of his hat or something like that. Those days were the good old days, right? I just think with so much else going on, I don't think that they believe that that's going to hit the mark like it hit maybe in the late 80s, early 90s. That's what I believe. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I say that, but that's why I believe what they're doing now. Just like you said, Isaiah, you got a big at Banker's Life. You got this emblem that runs 94 feet, the big trophy deal and all of that.
Yes.
Wait a minute, how is that? How is protecting the players different in December versus June?
It makes
I'll say this. I'll say that at all levels now they have a ban on stickers on the court, and that's what apparently that was. Where the in-season tournament, those are painted courts, so those are painted.
Okay.
Apparently, those were stickers because they stopped that because they're slippery, and guys slip and fall on them when you try to cut real quick because it's not the same grip of a surface. I always thought the Larry O'Brien Trophy in the finals was painted on there though.
That's what I thought.
You got time. I mean, and money obviously ain't an issue. You should paint it on there because it does need to look different. But then you can't tell me that you couldn't put. You remember how they used to always back in the like you were talking about when the Celtics and the Lakers were playing, it still had the finals logo on the side of the court, like they painted it on there, on the parquet or whatever.
Yeah.
Now they do all that stuff with lasers and stuff. Why can't you put it on there where at least people
for visual?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can
Ramon, go ahead. We got like 2 minutes.
You can definitely figure it out. If you can have a hockey game and a basketball game on the same day, you can figure out how to put the logo on the floor.
Because for me, it's not like we've talked about it before. Entertainment over sport or sport over entertainment. You've got to make it feel like it's a big moment. You look at other sports and how they handle their big moments. You have to treat it like what it is. You can't water it down because, people really don't care about that anymore. No, people still care about the small things, especially your core audience. And that if you drive away your core audience, at the end of the day, you can have the casuals and that's great. But eventually the casuals will leave if they don't, once the entertainment value isn't as exciting as it was previously. But that is going to do it. Coach, I do appreciate you joining us for all 3 segments today. It was awesome having you on. We definitely got to get you back. We'll definitely have you back for sure. But folks, that is going to do it for this episode of the Game Time Podcast.